The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the Geological Society of America's GeoCareers webinar. My name is Talia Bear. I am the Diversity and Career Officer at GSA, and I'll be moderating the webinar. Today, the webinar is Impress for Success at GSA's annual meeting. Your presenter is going to be Mr. Patrick McCandless, a professional geoscientist and fellow geoscientist of Canada, who, after 45 years in the mineral exploration industry, turned towards his passion for helping geoscience students transition from academia to the workplace. So in this webinar, Mr. McCandless will help you navigate and get the most out of your experience at the GSA meeting in Seattle in about 10 days. So you'll learn some tips on developing a business card and a networking game plan. We will take questions in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. There is a chat box in the right-hand corner, and you can pose your questions throughout the webinar through the chat box and at the end as well, and I will moderate the questions. So this webinar will be recorded, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Patrick McCandless. When you're ready.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining us today. So GSA convention in Seattle is just around the corner, and so what we want to do today is look at ways where we can make an impression to hopefully prospective employers. So we're going to talk about Impress for Success. So as you're preparing to go to GSA 2017 in Seattle, hopefully you're thinking about a few things. Certainly one of them would be, what am I going to learn today or during the various sessions and workshops that you might be attending. Also, there's going to be opportunities to meet with some of your colleagues and peers, and so that's usually an opportunity to have some fun. And also, hopefully you're thinking about job opportunities that possibly are going to be there at GSA and how you're going to make some kind of impression. And really that's our focus today, is giving you some tools to hopefully have some success at making an impression. So I guess the question around that is, how do you do that? How do you make a good impression to prospective employers or recruiters or HR people that are going to be in attendance at the convention? Well, making an impression, particularly at a big conference like GSA, I know talking with some students, it's like walking off a cliff with a lot of uncertainty as to how you're going to do it. You can see that there are opportunities to either get jobs or at least get an interview and talk to people. But it just seems like it's a little ways away. It's almost like there's this gap that we have between where you are right now in the academic or learning space and where you ultimately are going to be going in the earning space. In other words, getting a job. So what we're trying to do in the workshop today is give you really a set of practical skills to help you bridge this perceived gap and really get you on your way to having a successful time at GSA and possibly lining up prospective or possible jobs in the future. So really the first step that we want to take as we move towards having some success and impressing people is to separate ourselves out from the herd. At GSA, there are literally thousands of people, including lots of students. So really, what we're trying to focus on today is how do we stand out? So when we look at these cows, for example, generally speaking, they all look the same. Certainly, if you look at the black spots on the cows, they are different in small ways. But really, what we're trying to do is turn those black spots into purple spots. In other words, we want you to, as you go to an experience like GSA, to not be one of the cows and not standing out. We're thinking of you more as a purple cow. And certainly if we look at the field of cows and we see a purple cow, no doubt about it, you're going to stand out. So, okay, so what is it about being a purple cow? I mean, if we're all trying to be purple cows, how are we going to stand out? Really, the definition of being a purple cow is to be unique, to show your uniqueness. So the question is, what makes you unique? And to answer that, really, we have to look at the perspective of your possible employer or recruiter or HR person. What are they looking at in you that would be unique? So yeah, they're talking with lots of recruiters across the United States and Canada. They're definitely looking for uniqueness in an individual. And specifically, they're looking for people who create or build value. In other words, people that make a difference. They're not just wanting to hire somebody who's got a certain level of knowledge or skills. They're really, nowadays, the trend is looking for difference makers, looking for people who create value. So when we look at you with this idea of creating value, how do we assess that? When we look at, let's say, your resume, or we're in a conversation with you, or you're in an interview. So traditionally, we look at work experience. However, for a number of us, as undergraduates or graduates, that's not necessarily applicable because we don't have a lot of work experience. And it turns out that's okay. And recruiters know that when they're looking at somebody who has just graduated. So what they're focusing more on is, what is the growth potential of this individual? In other words, if we train them and give them responsibility, how are they going to respond to that? How are they going to grow to be a difference maker in our organization? Okay, so how do we assess your growth potential? So what we're looking at is your potential to build value. And how recruiters and HR people do that when they're looking at resumes and talking to you in an interview is they're looking for value indicators. This is a term used by recruiters to assess your potential to create value. So value indicators. And there's actually 4 key value indicators that they use. So they're looking for people who bring passion to the workspace, who have a strong work ethic, people who don't give up. They're persistent and taking on challenges, and people who always like to learn or improve. So these are the 4 key value indicators: passion, work ethic, persistence, always learning. Okay, well, that's nice. So how do we see those in you? I mean, can we see them when we look at your resume or your LinkedIn profile, for example? Well, it's not easy. So what recruiters do is they apply filters that they've developed to assess whether or not you've got these value indicators. And certainly one of them is work experience. So if you've had part-time work experience or a co-op experience, yes, they'll look at that. But really the number one filter used by recruiters nowadays, and it might surprise you, is volunteering. So when they look at a LinkedIn profile, they'll immediately go to the volunteer section to see how much volunteering an individual has done. So the question is why? Why are they looking at volunteering? And it's quite simple, really. It shows your commitment to an organization. And anybody I know that's been involved in volunteering, whether it be at school or in the community, these people typically have these value indicators, and recruiters know that. Another filter that they use quite often is looking at an individual's leisure activities. So those might include something to do with music, like playing piano, something that some of you might have done growing up, any kind of sporting activities that you've done in the university space or earlier in high school, and dance. So these are just three of the leisure activities they look at. And I've actually tested this out myself. I've over the years, I've hired people who have not got work experience, and they are either undergraduates or graduates. I even hired a high school student who had, in one case, competitive piano, 12 years of competitive piano. I hired somebody with 10 years of ballet, and I hired this high school student with 10 years of gymnastics. All of these individuals definitely had these value indicators when they were involved in their activity, and they all rose to the occasion to become tremendous contributors who created value with our organization. So recruiters know this, and that's why it's a filter. So on our resumes, we have a tendency, or we've been told, not to include those activities. I would now encourage you for your LinkedIn profile and for your resume to include these, because they are definitely being used, because we have to find a way of assessing your potential value, and this is one of the excellent ways of doing that. Okay, so these value indicators: passion, work ethic, persistence, and always improving, turn out to be very important in assessing your potential value. So, and we can do that by looking at part-time experience or your work experience at university, be it research or doing a thesis project. Volunteering, number one filter, and leisure activities. So we're going to be looking at your potential value in the context of these three sort of disciplines or areas. So, okay, so how do we tie this together? How do we present ourselves in a way? Yes, okay, I've got volunteering, or yeah, I played 12 years of competitive piano or varsity hockey or rowing. How can I show that? That's the trick. Well, typically we do it in our resume. However, the average attention or at least time spent on a resume, is about 6 seconds. So often those kind of filters are going to be overlooked. So a more effective way of doing it is creating a personal brand. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So what is a personal brand? So a personal brand is essentially who you are, what you do, how you do it in a way that creates value. So that's the context of the personal brand, is you creating value. So we can think about it in the past, what you've done in the past, or what you're doing now, or even what your intentions are. What are those intentions to create value? So we're looking at uniqueness, and we're looking at these value indicators. And when we put those two together, we end up with a brand, a personal brand. So your brand can be articulated. So how do you present your brand? So I get students to create a brand statement. So essentially, an effective brand statement identifies you as distinct from others. So that's the formula or definition for a purple cow. So 6 seconds is the average attention span of somebody you're talking to, be it in an interview or on a one-on-one session. So this is what I call a 6-second rule. So how do we present ourselves in a way that people can see that we create value, or at least have the potential to create value? So an effective brand statement will do this, and we know it because the brand statement is engaging and it resonates. So your listener is able to hear in a very short sentence how you create value. Brand statement typically will pique interest and curiosity. So that's what we want. We want to hook people to, in your conversation with somebody, in the very few first words, you want to be making sure that you pique somebody's interest about you. So to do that, we need to create a statement that is about the length of an out breath. In other words, about 10 words. So the purpose of a brand statement is to show off your uniqueness as a purple cow, indicate that you have the potential to create value. Here's the most important thing about featuring your brand in the form of a brand statement, is you end up attracting people and organizations to your brand space. In other words, you've got people that are interested in how you create value. They can relate it to their organization. In other words, they're saying, yeah, this is the kind of person we're looking for. We can teach them the kind of geoscience we want them to practice, or engineering practice. However, they need to have those value indicators, and the brand that they're presenting is essentially what we're looking for. So it attracts people into your brand space, puts you on people's radar screens. In other words, when somebody walks away from a conversation with you at GSA, whether it be in a group or in a one-on-one session, we want them being impressed. We want them to say, you know what, that was impressive. I got to keep an eye on that person. And we're going to show you some techniques for how you can follow up and sort of solidify the impression that you've made. So somebody's not going to necessarily offer you a job on the spot. after a conversation and presenting your brand statement. However, sometime down the road, when a job opportunity or a work experience opportunity does come up, hopefully you are at the top of the list. So that's what we want to do. We want to get you at the top of people's lists. The way to do that is to be on somebody's radar screen. So I'm just going to go through a few examples of individuals who have created brand statements and have had tremendous success at conferences in impressing, and they've had success, meaning they've gotten job interviews or they've got follow-up calls, and in some cases have actually got jobs, all because of presenting themselves, being able to articulate how they create value effectively. So here's a student from a fourth year geology student from Cornell University who's got a focus on environmental geoscience. So she starts her brand statement with an action word, which I've indicated in red, making ideas a reality to benefit people and the environment. So for Hannah, she's also created validation statements that we'll go into in a minute, just to back up her brand statement. So it's one thing to say your brand statement. Because you're going to pique somebody's interest, they're invariably going to say, well, how do you do that? Or that's interesting, tell me more about that. And so the individual who's created the brand statement is able to back it up. Here's now a mining engineer, used this brand statement to get his current job, building engineering solutions through continuous learning and research. This is this, like all brand statements, is a short statement that says, this is me and this is how I create value. And if you're thinking, well, how can I say that? The example that you use, so in the case of Hannah, making ideas a reality to benefit people and the environment, she used her example in Nepal, and then she stated in what I call a value statement how she did making ideas a reality to benefit people and the environment. So we have a brand statement, value example statement, and a value statement, all presented in a conversation with somebody. Here's a mechanical engineering student working together to produce innovative and quality solutions. So Jacob got his co-op position as a result of presenting this brand statement in an interview. And they love him in the co-op program where he's working right now, because every day he serves his brand. So every day he's working hard. He enjoys working with others, and he is every day creating innovative and quality solutions. So he'll have no trouble getting on once he graduates from mechanical engineering at the University of Victoria. Here's a business administration graduate leading creative change to build value for businesses. So this young lady's only been out of school for 3 years, but she's already in a very high level management position, all because of presenting this brand statement in an interview. So she got a job right in the interview after presenting this brand statement, and there were 45 applicants. All had way more experience than Allie, but nonetheless, she ended up getting the job. They just liked the way she has the potential to create value, and she's doing it. So, talking about impress for success, whether you have a brand statement or not, and I can certainly help you out with that in preparation for GSA, we need to develop a marketing strategy as we go to GSA. We've got to have a game plan in place. So the marketing strategy is pretty straightforward. What you need to have is what I call a brand card. It's essentially a business card that either features your brand statement or certainly stands out. You need to have a networking plan in place so that when you go to GSA, you're not overwhelmed. You've got just a perfect game plan that allows you to impress for success. And you need to know what to do after GSA. You need to know how to follow up on the connections you've made. This is all part of impressing for success. Let's start with the brand card. If you're going to GSA, you definitely need to have a card. This is the professional way of exchanging information, and it's a great way, if you have a brand card, to leave a tremendous impression. So I'm going to show you some examples. So this brand card introduces you as unique and professional. That's what a brand card does. So we're going to look at a couple of examples. These are easy to make. You can go on any print shop website and look at two-sided templates. So we feature a brand photo. So we need a photo of you that really reflects your career interest, and if you have a brand statement, your brand. So just think, in a stack of cards that people collect at the end of a day even. When I'm at GSA, I end up with 30 or 40 cards. Really, the ones that are going to stand out in the stack and the ones that are going to allow somebody to put a face to a name are cards like this. So we have a brand photo. We have contact information, name. I'd like to see the brand statement on the front. In this case, Hannah's got it on the back, which is fine. There's her brand statement. And then she's listed skills and experience. So including field work, mapping, sampling, GIS. So various skills that she's acquired from both research as well as her schoolwork. So what we're looking at here is essentially a mini resume. So we don't want to be handing out resumes. What we want to be doing is handing out brand cards that effectively allow people to remember who you are and have a quick reference to how you create value. Here's Mohammed Safan, mining engineering. Well, now he's a mining engineer. And right on, so he's got his brand photo. So here's him practicing as an engineer. Pretty easy to get photos. So I think Mohammed even photoshopped a mine site in the background, but really, if you're an engineer, it's a hard hat and a cruiser vest. If you're a geologist, maybe it's a picture of you standing at an outcrop. You can get one of your colleagues to snap a picture, or maybe you've got some field work or lab work photos that will do the trick for you. There's his name and contact information, and there is the brand statement. So right on the front of the card, it's this is me and this is how I create value. On the back of his card, he's got a list of engineering skills, and he's even included some certificates. So the idea of the brand card is it shows that you're acting professional. It's an opportunity to show your uniqueness, because the brand card is definitely going to look different than most other cards that people are going to be receiving. And it's an opportunity to not only feature a brand statement if you have one, but also skills. So again, this is like a mini resume. Okay, so we've looked at the brand card. Now let's have a look at the next step in your marketing strategy. Now that you've got a card, is networking. So here we are at GSA. It turns out that 80% of jobs are acquired through talking to people. So you definitely need to be talking to people and essentially marketing yourself. So another way I like to think about marketing yourself and talking to people is like going on a fishing trip. So to have a successful fishing trip, we need to know what kind of bait to put on the hook. Certainly need to know where to put the line in the water, especially if it's fly fishing. If you hook a fish, it's important to keep tension on the line so that you don't lose the fish. And finally, you need to know how to get the fish in the boat or on shore. So we're looking at 4 components: bait, cast, hook, and catch. So let's kind of go through these and imagine yourself at GSA and you have an opportunity to talk to somebody, not somebody you know, but somebody who you don't know. So kind of a one-on-one. So first of all, we got to bait the hook. Baiting the hook is very straightforward. Even if you're the most shy person imaginable, baiting the hook really is just showing an interest in others. How we do that is we ask engaging questions. And then all we do is listen. And then we ask more questions. So really the first part of your conversation is going to be one-sided after you've said your opening line. So here's an example of how it's going to go at GSA. You walk up to somebody, and this is what Hannah does. So, hi, my name's Hannah. This is to somebody she doesn't know. Just walks up and says, hi, my name's Hannah. What brings you to the conference? That is all you say. So what they do is go on and on about why they're at the conference, be it to learn more about geochemistry or LIDAR or whatever the case may be. They're going on and on and on. And, you know, you're listening and asking more questions. So, for example, somebody might say, well, I'm here to learn about gold exploration. And you're going, oh, that's interesting. What company do you work for? Blah, blah, blah. What kind of projects do you have? So all you're doing is just firing a bunch of questions. And, you know, and people appreciate that. They appreciate people showing an interest in them and their organization. Now, at some point, it turns around. The conversation goes in the opposite direction. So, Hannah, tell me about yourself. So, in the past, you know, we've struggled with this. And remember that attention span of people around 6 seconds. So, if you're just sort of rambling along, people after a while are not listening and you're not leaving an impression. So instead, it's an opportunity to cast. It's an opportunity to say, I'm a geology student. So not I'm a geology student at Cornell or University of Washington or whatever the case may be. It's just, I'm a geology student. Okay, now if you have a brand statement, it's an opportunity to say it, making ideas a reality to benefit people and the environment. So what's happened with Hannah and happens with most people who say their brand statements is they get this response. That is very interesting. Tell me more about that. So not every time that's going to happen, and that's okay. You exchange cards and you go on to the next. But for the times when somebody is interested, that means you've hooked them. Okay, tell me more about that. So this is where we talk about validating your brand. Brand statements are incredibly powerful, but they're also very dangerous if you're not able to back them up. So we validate your brand. So essentially we give an example. So Hannah comes right out after somebody says, oh, tell me more about that. She says, my experience in Nepal is a good example. Then right away, you validate that example. So you create a value statement that connects to your brand and your example statement. And it goes something like, I created a landslide hazard map for local communities to implement in future development. So this is a statement that validates her brand statement. It connects beautifully. So Hannah did this as a volunteer when she was in Nepal. So whatever example you can think of, if you've created a brand statement, and then just a value statement that's related to a volunteer experience, an experience at school, or maybe as a leisure activity. So finally, we get to the catch part. So you've had this wonderful conversation with them. They're impressed. You're probably on their radar screen. And so what you do at the end, or at any point in the conversation, let's say they're not showing much of an interest, you still say, thank you for taking the time to tell me about your company and your involvement. That's all you do, right? You shake hands, and then we come to follow-up. So we exchange cards. So now you've got their contact information and they have yours. And not only do they have yours, but they've got a way of remembering you, because your card's going to stand out in the stack. So then you send an email, preferably that evening, and all you're doing is saying thank you and sort of reference or geo-reference your conversation with them. Thank you for, I was the student that talked to you at the luncheon, and thank you for telling me about your company and your involvement. That's all you do. So that's just a thank you. So then people say, well, what do I do after that? You know, and the key here is to not do anything more than continue to show an interest. So you're not asking about jobs or job availability. What you're doing is, now that you've got their card, you're doing some research and you're going on 43101 reports or going on their website, you're learning more about their projects, and what do? 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, you've thought about some questions, you send them an email, or you track the company or the organization. And if it's a publicly traded company and they have a news release, then you send an email to your contact and say, I noticed you had a news release on your ABC project. I've got a few questions about that. So what are we trying to do here? We're just trying to stay on people's radars. So that's what we're doing. When you're talking to people, you're marketing your brand, you're expanding your network. The more people that know about you, the better. So the interesting thing about networking is it's often 2 or 3 layers down where the effectiveness and impact takes place. So you might be talking to an insurance salesman. Okay, that's not going to work in terms of geoscience opportunities or engineering opportunities. However, it turns out the insurance person knows somebody who just might need you. So that's how that works. So the more people you talk to and get into your LinkedIn network, the better. So that's the whole idea here, is get on people's radar screens, get to the top of their list so that when an opportunity comes up, I talked to a student not too long ago who was at a conference and didn't get a response for like 3 months and then ended up getting a job. Who knows when the opportunity arises? We can't control that, but we can certainly control marketing yourself. So yeah, here we are. We're at GSA. So who do we talk to? That's the thing. And where do we do it? Where do we go? And so that's where we need to, these are the two questions we need to ask ourselves when we step into GSA. Yeah, we're going to talks and so on and so forth, but there's going to be opportunities to network and talk to people. So who do we talk to? Where do we go? So on the who side, you go to industry booths, go to the exhibit hall, lots of people to talk to there, and just remember, show an interest in others. So you just walk up, do a little research in their company on your device, walk up and ask some engaging questions, exchange cards, follow up. Suppliers. There's lots of suppliers at GSA. You need to talk to those people because those suppliers work with government agencies and with industry representatives. So they know a lot of people. So you want to impress for success with them as well. USGS representatives. Definitely want to talk to those folks because they know a lot of people, and the same with Bureau of Land Management. So these are, all of these are places or people, I should say, that you can have a conversation with. Okay, where are they? So where can we go to start networking? One of the best places is to actually volunteer at the conference. So that way, whether you're handing out bags or whatever the case may be, you're involved in registration, you're talking to people, and it just gives you that extra opportunity to show an interest in others and hopefully show off your brand. So receptions, all kinds of different, there's opening receptions, different receptions where you get a chance to talk to people. Workshops, if you're taking a workshop, wonderful opportunity to do one-on-one conversations and market your brand. We talked about the exhibit hall, people in booths, USGS representatives, Bureau of Land Management, suppliers, they're all there, and just tremendous. In a day at GSA, really, you should be aiming to get 25 to 30 cards. Luncheons, great opportunity again. I'm not as big a fan about luncheons, the sitting down part, because all of a sudden you're just talking with just one person, the person beside you or on both sides of you. And typically your competitors, other students, are at the student luncheons. So it's not as good an opportunity, but still an opportunity. Usually there's a reception part before the student networking luncheon. And so there'll be, that's where you really want to focus your marketing. Industry booths, definitely. Here you get one-on-one opportunities, chance to exchange cards, chance to ask engaging questions, and who knows, maybe that industry representative says, "Oh, so tell me about yourself. What are you up to?" Brand statement. Core Shack. Yeah, it's here we are at or poster displays. You just get a chance to if you're presenting at a poster or at the Core Shack, then it's perfect to talk about your project, but also an opportunity to ask questions to your listener or viewer. And if you're not, just hang out. There's all kinds of industry and government representatives that are looking at posters. And so, yeah, perfect opportunity to market yourself. So here are just a few do's and don'ts. So on the do side, as you're entering into the GSA experience, is you definitely want to be the purple cow. You want to show off your uniqueness. You want to go with a game plan. So that means saying, okay, today I'm going to talk to 10 representatives at industry booths. I'm going to talk to 10 people who I don't know, so on and so forth. Go in with a game plan, otherwise it's going to be pretty overwhelming. Okay, we want to show off our passion, persistence, always learning, and work ethic. Easiest way to do that is with a brand statement. Do research. Usually GSA has a list of organizations, companies, and representatives that are going to be attending, that are going to be in the exhibit hall and in industry booths. So do some research, pick 5 companies, learn about them, go and show an interest in them. Ask engaging questions. Really, that's just how simple that is. Listen, ask more questions. Maybe take a hand lens if you're a geoscience student or graduate, a little bit geeky maybe, but just have it in your pocket. So if you're looking at some core or a rock that's available, it just shows that you're showing an interest. Biggest thing, exchange cards. Definitely, it's an opportunity to market your brand, and it's an opportunity to get a company representative contact so that you can follow up. On the don't side, so this is what students typically do, is they hang out together. It's what I call a wolf pack. So yeah, you know, I mean, you've been hanging out with your buddies at school. At GSA, yeah, it's okay to go out for a beer afterwards, but when you're at the conference and you're out networking, you do it on your own. Your colleagues are really your competitors, and it's for your intended audiences. It's difficult for them to understand how you create value when you're with a group of people. So avoid wolf packs. So at receptions and networking luncheons, there's always food and alcohol available. So that's okay, that's fine. But let's get our networking done before we dive into a whole bunch of food. So if you're walking around with a plate full of food and a beer or a glass of wine in the other hand, I don't see how you can be very effective in walking up to somebody and shaking their hand. So yeah, no problem having some food and alcohol, but let's get some of the networking out of the way before you even start, and you do it on your own. Okay, and just be mindful about alcohol consumption. Having a bottle of beer or a glass of wine is great, nothing wrong with that. It's just having too much, especially if you go into an industry suite, something after hours, you don't want to leave the wrong impression. We're impressing for success, not for disaster. Under no circumstances do you hand out resumes. When you hand out resumes to an industry representative or somebody like that, unsolicited particularly, they don't make their way out of the conference, quite frankly. They don't have time, and they're not interested. If somebody asks you for your resume, then say you'll send it to them. You exchange cards, and that way they've got an electronic version of your card. Or even better is to connect with them on LinkedIn so they can see your LinkedIn profile. So having a marketing strategy essentially means having a brand card, doing a lot of networking, talking to a lot of folks. You know, have it so that you've got a target each day, so you're just not saying, oh yeah, okay, I talked to a couple of people. Not good enough. Talk to 20, 30 people. Make that as sort of a target. So when you accumulate a bunch of cards, then just don't stick them away somewhere. Follow up on every one of those contacts with an email and a thank you, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, follow up again with some questions about their company. What are we trying to do? Get on people's radar screens. So going to GSA can be absolutely an amazing experience, but if you're trying to impress for success and you don't have a game plan, it's kind of like being in a Shark Tank. It's going to be overwhelming. It's not going to be a good experience from that standpoint, trying to impress, to have some success. So really, what we want to do is have it so that you have a marketing strategy that includes a brand card, networking plan, and a follow-up strategy. So that way you're not getting eaten by the sharks. More importantly, you're kind of swimming along with them. So during GSA, and specifically on Sunday, I'm going to be there, and I've done this in previous GSA conferences, conducting a resume clinic. So if you have, there's a sign up, there'll be a sign up sheet. And so it's an opportunity. I think we're doing 20 or 30-minute sessions. So it's an opportunity to have a look at your resume. In the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about brand cards, or creating a brand statement, for example, developing a networking plan, I've got a website called GeoDude Corner. And on that website, there are examples of brand statements, how to put one together, so on and so forth. Or if you want some help with any aspects of getting yourself prepared for GSA, what I do daily is a Skype call. So we do a one-on-one session, no cost to you. It's just my way. My brand statement is helping students and professionals discover their greatness. So really, we go through a step-by-step process of discovering your greatness and creating things like brand statements. So the Skype address is GeoDude11. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate. At the very least, jump on the website. Thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to take any questions. Talea?
Thanks so much, Patrick. We do have a couple questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please either type it into the chat box or into the question box on your control panel. So I have a question here. What is the difference between a brand statement and an elevator pitch?
Excellent, excellent question. I get that all the time. There is, well, I don't know. It's basically the same thing. I don't know how to define an elevator pitch. So that's assuming you get into an elevator and you have just a few floors to talk to people. So that means you can go on and on a little bit. A brand statement is something that gets around this, what I call the 6-second rule. So you need to capture somebody's attention with an engaging statement that resonates. In other words, they remember it and it piques their interest and curiosity. So the way to make that effective is to have it in about 10 words. So probably the same concept, but I know a brand statement is something that's 10 words or less. And I've created brand statements, helped students and graduates and professionals, literally thousands now, creating brand statements. So what I do is walk people through an inventory process. We take inventory of your skills, strengths, values, passions, and goals, and we create an action statement. So really what it does is it prepares you for that interview question that typically comes up of, so we have this job available, tell us briefly how you would make a difference or create value. That is such a typical interview question. With a brand statement, you knock it off perfectly. What typically has been happening, what students and graduates have shared with me when they've gone into an interview, had an opportunity to present their brand statement, is the interviewer, once the brand statement is heard, push all of their books or questions off to the side, and they typically say, okay, I want to hear more about this. And the reason they do that is they're looking for people that create value and make a difference. So they've got all these trick questions and a variety of questions, but they're all aiming at the same thing. How do I create value?
We have another question here. Let's see. So I've been steering away from business cards because people lose them, and using LinkedIn. What is your advice about using LinkedIn?
Using LinkedIn is fantastic, and it's really the professional social media platform for connecting with professionals. The thing is, you need to essentially get permission to connect with somebody on LinkedIn. And I like to do that once I've made an initial contact with somebody. So using LinkedIn is key because it's going to profile your brand statement if you have one, and how you create value. You're going to be able to show off all your skills, your volunteering experience. So recruiters almost exclusively now use LinkedIn. They don't use resumes anymore because they're too random. It's too hard, you know, if they're only spending 6 seconds on a resume, it's too hard to see quickly how you create value. So that's why they go with the LinkedIn profiles. Now, when you're introducing yourself to somebody, it's just the professional way of doing it is exchanging cards. The experience I've had with talking with students and graduates who are using cards is their card does not get thrown out or get lost simply because it stands out. So the idea of the business card is you show professionalism by exchanging cards. What happens is somebody who has your card is now sitting back in the hotel room or back at the office. They're going through the stack of cards. Guarantee they're throwing cards out because they can't remember who the heck they were talking to. When they come to your card that features a brand photo and a brand statement, they're all, at the very least, they're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that person. That's the person with a brand statement. I mean, the brand card complements the conversation that you've had with somebody. So it effectively supports your networking. So brand cards are critical, and good on you for using LinkedIn, because that is the better way of creating a profile and presenting or marketing yourself.
Okay. How can these strategies presented in this webinar be adapted for a focus that of getting into grad school?
Excellent. Okay, so in a very, very good way. So I've had lots of people that have created brand statements, for example, who have gone to conferences like GSA and have gone around to the various universities. And really, the universities are also looking for students, not just students to do research projects, but the universities all fundraise, and they want graduates that go out into industry and into whatever career pursuit they've chosen, and be difference makers and put a good name on the school. So they want quality researchers, whether it be master's, PhD, or postdoc. And so what students have found is when they get into an interview or a conversation with a university and they say their brand statement, it always seems to pique curiosity and they want to know more about you. So really, ones that have had success, I can think of many examples where students were wanting to. I've got an example of a PhD candidate who's now finished actually at the University of Texas at Austin. Yeah, she just presented her brand statement and got an interview with an advisor, and boom, she got into a great school and into a great research project. So again, the strategy with the brand statement is you're attracting organizations and academic institutions to your space. So if you're looking to go to Colorado School of Mines or University of Texas at Austin, the University of Washington, wherever you're interested in going for grad school, you want to be presenting yourself in a way that says, I can create value, right? So you're already choosing the schools or school that you want to go to. Now you got to make an impression. And the best way I know how to make that impression is to say in a brand statement, this is me and this is how I create value, and which essentially translates to this is how I'm going to do the research.
Thank you. Well, that is all the time we have for questions today. So thank you, Patrick, so much for the webinar. This webinar was recorded and it will be emailed to you in the next couple of days. So thank you all so much for your participation and good luck at GSA.
Yes, thank you very much, and hopefully see you at the resume clinic.
Thank you.